Thank you, Danny. Thank you all for joining us as we begin the effort and discuss with you all today the Voter Purge Protection Act. So let me start by thanking Representative Beatty, my colleague and partner here in this effort in Congress, her in the House, myself in the Senate, of course, Skye Perryman with Democracy Forward, and my former Secretary of State colleague. He's still the Secretary of State of Minnesota, Steve Simon. Um, First, just an observation about the timing here, because I know dominating the news is the federal government shutdown. And so, among the other things that we're working on, primarily trying to get Republicans to negotiate with Democrats to address the spiking healthcare costs for Americans across the country as part of an agreement to reopen the federal government. And that's obviously very important. But as much time as that may be taking, as much effort as is involved with that, we felt compelled to share with you all and the general public important information about what else is going on. And we know that the Trump administration and Republicans in Congress are worried already about the next midterm elections. They know the unpopularity of their agenda. You look at the record from this last year, significant cuts to healthcare, significant cuts to nutrition assistance programs, tax breaks for billionaires, etc. So they've come to the conclusion that their only hope for holding on to power after the midterm elections is to rig the election before it even begins. And in doing so, not just trying to influence next year's midterm elections, but election cycles for years and years to come. So in that vein, we've heard a lot about redistricting across the country. It started in Texas, of course, but Republicans are very active in Indiana and Ohio and likely other states. And we've heard of California's response to that. But what has been less reported on is the efforts of the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security to set the stage for a mass purging of voter rolls. And so that's what we want to get into here and why we're responding with legislation. If you haven't heard this already, the Department of Justice is demanding, without any legal basis, that states across the country submit not just voter rolls to the federal government, but a lot of sensitive and personal voter data. That's number one. At the same time, the Department of Homeland Security is unlawfully building a massive database with these voter information that is submitted. What they're doing pretty clearly is setting up a program that's never been tested and never been designed for this purpose to run voter data through this DHS database and try to identify, in a pretext, in my opinion, for the purging of voter rolls in states across the country. And one of two things is going to happen. For states that do comply, they're going to be pressured to purge voters when the Trump administration tells them to and who they tell them to. And for states that don't comply, they're going to be sued. They're going to be sued and they're going to be subject to the ongoing conspiracy theories about massive voter fraud to call into question the integrity of their elections and the election results. It's a dangerous fishing expedition that's going to lead to chaos and risks denying eligible United States citizens of their fundamental right to vote, the ability for them to register to vote, to stay registered to vote, or to cast their ballot, or to have their ballot be counted. How un-American. It's dangerous, and that's why we have to call it out and do everything we can to ensure a free and fair election in 2026 and every future election as well. And so today, Congresswoman Beatty and I are announcing the introduction of our legislation, the Voter Purge Protection Act, to stop the administration's baseless attacks on our fundamental right to vote. And some key straightforward elements of the bill include ensuring that Americans cannot be stripped of their right to vote without proof that a voter has either passed away or has permanently moved out of their states. For those who are targeted to be removed, it requires that they are notified by elections officials so that there's no surprise when they show up to vote on election day that their name is not on the list and it's too late to address whatever the issue may or may not be. And it would also prevent voters from being purged simply for not voting in prior elections. We won't get into the details of list maintenance. We can. We have an expert, the Secretary of State Simon, to address that if that's the subject of any of the questions that come in after our remarks. But in closing, let me just say this. This dynamic should concern every single American, regardless of party. When the President of the United States is trying to dictate who can vote in the next election and who cannot, that is beyond worrisome. And it's clear that it's part of Donald Trump's desperate ploy to hold on to power by rigging next year's elections and trying to predetermine the majorities in the House and the Senate. So we're trying to prevent these purges. We're trying to protect voters, and in so doing, protect our fundamental democracy in the United States of America. And so for that reason, we're introducing this bill and calling upon all of our colleagues, both sides of the aisle, to join us in this effort. And with that, let me hand it over to the House champion on this, Representative Beatty from Ohio.
Well, first of all, let me just say thank you to my friend first and my colleague, Senator Padilla, for allowing me to join you as we reintroduce the Voter Purge Protection Act. But more importantly, as we speak to America today, let me thank you for giving us the introduction of why this is so urgent now. Also, walking us through what is happening across this country, whether it is Texas, whether it is here in my home state of Ohio, with the Department of Justice, with Homeland Security, and what's happening to our constituents, our voters. And let me just say, this is happening to people across the United States. And that's why this legislation is about one of our most sacred rights. And certainly that is the right to vote, because we know what's at stake. And let me just take a moment, if it's all right, to talk about in my home state of Ohio, where nearly 160,000 people were recently purged from the voters' roll. Many simply because they had not voted in the past, let's say, 4 years. So let me be clear. Voting is not use it or lose the right. Because too often these so-called voter purges have silenced voices, people of color, people of low income, communities, and even our seniors who have waited and fought for the right to vote. My late mother, I can remember her saying, I am so proud, even if I have to stand in line for 3 or 4 or 5 hours to vote, because I earned it. And our voices are our power. And so I can tell you, in Ohio alone, more than half the voters who might be purged from the state's voter rolls are registered in majority minority counties. Even with the ongoing shutdown, as my good friend and senator mentioned, we felt it was important to introduce this bill today because the voter rolls are under siege by the Trump administration. Just last month, the Department of Justice took an unprecedented step by filing lawsuits against 8 states simply for their refusal to hand over access to their state's sensitive voter information and registration list so they could create massive government databases to purge voter rolls. We are watching and we know what's happening. That's why this bill is so important. And our bill is simple. As the senator just said, it is simple, it is straightforward, and we want Republicans and Democrats to sign on. And Senator, I can tell you, we have been making a clarion call in the House to send it out to all of our members on the House side, but we've also been meeting with specialty groups. We know women so often are taken advantage of in this process. We've been meeting with our tri-caucus to explain to them that our vote is our voice. You simply can't take away someone's right to vote unless there is clear and reliable evidence that they are no longer eligible. We're not asking people to do anything that's not legal or fair. And I want that to be blatantly clear to the individuals watching and listening to us, such as moving out of the state or passing away. We're not asking for that. We understand that. It ends up the practice of using return mail or missed elections as an excuse to strip away the fundamental right. And it ensures voters to get noticed and to get a fair chance to correct whatever the mistakes are. Oftentimes, people move within that window. So simply informing them, they can correct or ratify what was wrong. This fight for me is very personal. I have spoken to Ohioans who show up on election day only to be told then that they are no longer registered. Now, let me just say this to everybody. That's not democracy. That is voter suppression. And that's another reason that we are doing this. The right to vote is the cornerstone of democracy, and protecting it is our highest duty for us to do, not only as elected officials, but as citizens of this free country, this great America that we live in. So with this legislation, we are asking a stand against harmful tactics that seek to silence the voices and undermine the trust in our elections. So today I say to everybody, every voter in Ohio, every voter across this country, we see you, we hear you, we're fighting for you. And to those who try to weaken our democracy by purging eligible voters, we're coming for you. How simple, how straightforward is that? We're going to be relentless. We're not going to stop. We're asking you to join us in this fight. And let me just say, in case you don't know, I am Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, and I approve this message. Thank you, and I yield back to my senator.
Well, thank you, Congresswoman. Yes, you're a colleague and you're a friend, and it's my honor to introduce another friend at this time, Secretary of State Simon from the state of Minnesota. And I'll preempt his remarks with a couple of things, because every time we talk, he reminds me how Minnesota always ranks at the top of voter participation. And so he knows what he's doing and he does it well. And he and I both can recall that this is not President Trump's first attempt at trying to obtain sensitive personal information from voters for the purposes of voter purging. In the first administration, he tried setting up a commission to do the very same thing. It was a failed commission. It folded for being so problematic. But instead of learning the lesson, he's back, this time weaponizing the Department of Justice to try to do this work. So, Secretary Simon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Senator. And I want to thank Representative Beatty, too, for her leadership. And Senator Padilla, thank you for bringing us all together to discuss this important issue. I'm Steve Simon, Minnesota Secretary of State, which means I'm the chief elections official in the state of Minnesota. So my office created and now maintains what we call our statewide voter registration system. And our staff members support the local election officials who create and update voter records in the system every day. It's what we do. Each voter record that comes into that system in Minnesota is verified individually and is checked against data from state and federal partners to confirm a voter's eligibility. Now, we have state laws in place to protect voters and ensure the highest level of security and accuracy of this system. This year, we have seen what appears to be a federal attempt to take over not only our Minnesota voter registration system, but the systems across the country. This spring, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, part of the Department of Homeland Security, rapidly retrofitted its Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlements database program, known as the SAVE database or SAVE program, to act as a citizenship check for voters. Now, that system was created by Congress decades ago to verify the legal status of immigrants on an individual basis for entitlement benefits. That's why the word entitlements is in the name. To be clear, this system was not created by Congress to track citizenship for mass numbers of voters. The administration has made that unilateral change without congressional authorization. Since May, the administration has been actively marketing this SAVE tool to secretaries of state, making rapid, large-scale changes to the core functionality of that program, of that database, including adding data from the Social Security Administration in order to verify the citizenship of hundreds of thousands of people at a time. Now, the administration has provided no evidence of the accuracy or the security of the data in this SAVE program. In fact, the Department of Homeland Security has acknowledged that the SAVE program contains outdated information that will result in false identifications of eligible voters as non-citizens. And there are further reasons to doubt this program's accuracy, including the fact that individuals born before 1978 or who acquired citizenship through other means would not necessarily identify as citizens in the Social Security Administration data. So this system has serious real-life implications if it is used without proper vetting and testing, and we have to take meaningful action now to minimize the potential harm. If states receive bad information on voters because the underlying data is bad, eligible voters, let me repeat that, eligible voters could very well be taken off the voter registration list without any notification. Now, in the 32 states and territories without same-day voter registration, this could look very much like a longtime voter who is fully eligible to vote, showing up in their polling place on election day and being turned away. And I'll call that what that is. It is un-American and it is undemocratic. And it appears this administration intends for this program, this SAVE program, to be used perhaps forcibly by all states. This summer, the Department of Justice, as you heard, began to request all voter records, including sensitive information from all 50 states. We're talking about name, address, birth date, partial or full Social Security number, driver's license number, voting history, party registration, and more. We have been told that this request is to ensure that proper controls are in place for our system, but publicly, I will repeat that, publicly, the Department of Homeland Security has said that they are seeking to use the information that the DOJ gets from the states to subject registered voters to the SAVE program or database. Now, voter registration list maintenance is important, very important. That's why states like ours have robust policies in place to do regular list maintenance as required by federal law. However, the information used to remove people's voter registration records must be objective and reliable. The Voter Purge Protection Act proposed by Senator Padilla and Representative Beatty would give critical protections to voters across the country. It would ensure that voters will at least be provided the information about their registration status and an opportunity to correct the record before Election Day. It is the bare minimum to protect voters from being stripped of their rights to vote through no fault of their own. So I want to thank you for your time and attention. I'll be happy to answer any questions after the next speaker. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Secretary Simon. We now turn it over to Skye Perryman.
Thank you, Senator. First, let me express my appreciation to you, to Congresswoman Beatty, and to Secretary of State Simon for all that you're doing to fight for people and communities. The leadership continues to help give countless Americans faith that our democracy can survive this moment and that people will be protected. My name is Skye Perryman, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with the organization that I lead, Democracy Forward, we're a national nonpartisan nonprofit organization that works to advance democracy and social progress through litigation and policy education in the courts. Democracy Forward provides legal representation to people and communities across this country free of charge. And since inauguration, we have had to file hundreds of legal actions, launching more than 150 investigations, and securing multiple significant courtroom victories to protect the American people from the direct harms of the Trump-Vance administration, the way in which this administration is running roughshod over people's rights, and threatening our democracy as a whole. We are winning court orders before judges that were appointed by Democratic presidents, judges that were appointed by Republican presidents, and judges that were appointed by President Trump himself because of the reckless way this administration is operating. And we are proud to do our work on behalf of American voters, nonprofit organizations, unions, small businesses, veterans groups, educators, houses of worship, and so many more. We coordinate an initiative known as Democracy 2025, which is more than 650 organizations that are committed to democracy, that are working in the courts every day, and that we have been credited with coordinating the largest and most effective legal strategy against unlawful executive action in United States history. And that is why I am so honored to be here today to join you all to talk about the urgency of protecting voter rolls and voting rights. Since Democracy Forward's founding in 2017, we have had to address attempts by President Trump and his allies to undermine the ability of people to vote. Senator Padilla mentioned the Pence-Kobach Voter Commission, which was the Trump 1.0 version of seeking to collect private information on individual voters and to store it at that time on White House servers. He was correct in noting that commission was disbanded because it was hugely problematic, and it was also disbanded in the face of litigation that Democracy Forward and so many other partners across civil society had to file in order to expose how harmful those efforts were to our democracy and to the American people. We know that democracy is built on the idea that all eligible voters should be able to cast their votes and to choose the direction of their communities and our country by exercising their right to vote. However, unfortunately, we continue to see attacks across the country on the right to vote. And now we see attacks from the White House itself. Let me be clear that efforts to purge voter rolls and to purge voters from the rolls are unlawful. The stakes for the American people and our freedom and our democracy could not be higher in this moment. While voter suppression is not new, what is new is the way in which this administration is doubling down on so many dangerous strategies to try to prevent people from using their voices and voting. Just this week, we have had to file a motion in federal court on behalf of our clients, the League of Women Voters, and many other voting groups to stop one of the most egregious threats that we've seen by the administration so far. The so-called Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, and the Department of Homeland Security and the Social Security Administration and other agencies have secretly merged personal data from across the federal government into these interagency databases that you heard Secretary Simon speak about, and you heard Senator Padilla and Congresswoman Beatty speak about. While Elon Musk may have left the government, DOGE is still up to no good, and this administration is up to no good in seeking to compromise the private and personal information of the American people and to store it on systems of the Department of Homeland Security that are known to be unreliable. This is unlawful, and it is concerning, and it does get worse. Because not only is this administration compromising people's data in a way that is unlawful, that we are having to challenge in court, but they're now seeking to use this data to encourage and to enable states to erroneously remove voters from the rolls and from the ability to vote. That is why we and our co-counsel are in court every day. We were in court last week. We were in court again on Tuesday to try to stop this. We have seen this pattern. We saw it in the first Trump administration. We are seeing it again now. So our promise at Democracy Forward to the American people is that we will be in court every single day to try to stop these abuses of power. But we know that the courts are only one pillar. And it is important that all branches of government do their job to check this administration's attack. And that is why it is so important that Congress take action to protect the right to vote. And it is why I'm so honored to be here with Senator Padilla, with Representative Beatty, and with Secretary of State Simon. So with elections happening next month and of course next year, we know this work is urgent. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you for your leadership.